It's time for Supply Chain Now, broadcasting live from the supply chain capital of the country, Atlanta, Georgia. Heard around the world, Supply Chain Now spotlights the best in all things supply chain, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and the critical issues of the day. And now, here are your hosts.
So welcome to Supply Chain Now. My name is Enrique Alvarez, and I'll be your host today. I am very excited to have the opportunity to not only highlight the best, most creative, and impactful companies in Latin America, but also to talk to the entrepreneurs, the leaders, and the supply chain professionals that make it all work. And today I have a very special guest, a serial entrepreneur with a BC background and a passion for startups. Our guest is a very focused, persistent, and calm individual. He used to be a goalie at St. Michael's College and cheers for the Colombian national team whenever they play. But before we jump into that, a quick reminder to all of you to subscribe to Supply Chain Now, wherever you get your podcast from. It's completely free, and you will not want to miss conversations like the one I'm sure we're going to have today. You can also visit our website at supplychainnow.com or visit our YouTube channel. And now, without any further ado, let me introduce you to Brian York. Brian is the founder and CEO of Cubo, CUBBO, micro-fulfillment solution, dark store for retailers. Brian, how are you doing today? Great having you.
Doing well, Enrique. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's great to have you. So where are you right now, Brian?
I'm in Bogota. So it's usually a little cloudy or mostly cloudy here, but this time of the year, the end of December, mid to end December to January, it's no clouds in the sky type of days. So it's a really nice day today.
It looks beautiful. We can kind of see a little bit of the buildings outside your window and very green. And it sounds like a beautiful place to live in.
Yeah, I've been here for 4 years. And originally, kind of just jumping into my background, if you don't mind, I was adopted here, and as a baby, and I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, about 20 minutes south of Boston on the South Shore. And I've always wanted to come back and get reconnected to my roots, find my biological family. And so that's what brought me back here in early 2017. Wow. And I haven't left. And so I've been able to find my family. I'm reconnected to my biological mother and my biological brother. And now kind of looking and getting to know my extended family as well. And so for me, it's a dream come true to be back in the city where I was born, building tech startups from scratch, which I'll get into in a moment. And, it's an easy flight back home too, if I need to get back to Boston or go visit friends in San Francisco or anywhere. In the U.S., it's not that far away. So for me, it's a perfect place to be.
It sounds like very, very interesting and very exciting too. I mean, just finding your biological family, that must be, how's that going on? That sounds very, very interesting and exciting.
Yeah, it took me about 18 months to find them. I tried to do it by my own at first. I was going onto Facebook and searching for Rosa Cruz. That was the name of my mother. And so trying to, started there, and then I started to visit the orphanage, obviously, and get my paperwork, and from there get my mother's cedula, which is her identification number, and tried to search for her in my family myself, but because of my lack of Spanish, which unfortunately is still the case today.
Yeah, you're going to have to practice this for a second interview, hopefully in Spanish.
Exactly. So, I tried to do it for on my own for a little bit, and then eventually hired a private investigator who then, it took him a little bit of time as well, and eventually found my mother about 2 hours outside of Bogota in a small town, which she still lives at today. And so she's there, she's comfortable there, and also was able to find through her my brother who lives in Medellin.
Wow.
And so now I talk frequently to my brother through video calls or WhatsApp. My mother doesn't have a smartphone, so it's a little bit harder to chat with her. But yeah, it's great to be reconnected.
No, thank you very much for sharing all that story. It sounds great, and congratulations, I guess, after a big search. It must have been very rewarding, right? To reconnect to your
Absolutely.
roots and your
Absolutely.
country and your biological mom. And um, that's great. I'm sure she's thrilled as well to meet you.
Yeah. Yeah. She told me when I met her that she always knew I was going to come back and find her. And so, it's been a great pleasure to be close to her, and also, obviously maintain uh, my connection, and going back and forth to the U.S. and visiting family back home too. So it's like I have two families, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
really
great. Yeah, you're basically just doubling up on moms, and having a
exactly.
mom is great. So that's
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
So what experience, and of course this is a very touching experience, and once again to sharing it with us. But so what other experience kind of growing up make a big impact in your life that kind of steer the course to you becoming such a I guess startup fanatic, if you will.
Yeah. So I've sort of always known that I like to start businesses on my own. And in the beginning, when I was in high school, I started a landscaping business. And me and a friend started the business when I was a freshman in high school. And then, we grew that business month over month, year over year, and pretty much throughout, the time I was in high school. So that was nice as a way to earn extra income. And
And that
so,
was all in Boston, correct?
yeah, well, the South Shore of Boston. And while that wasn't software, that gave me a taste of what it was like to start a business from scratch. Didn't have any customers at the time, but started to rake my neighbors' leaves, and from there, word of mouth kind of spread throughout the town, and then the rest of the South Shore. And so, we ended up getting trucks and lawnmowers and the
Oh
whole thing.
wow.
So,
Right. It's
yeah,
scaled up
so
very quickly.
yeah, but very, very labor intensive, no software. And
Right.
so that
Right.
gave me a little bit of exposure to what it was like, and to start a company, and was absolutely loved that experience. But also, kind of maybe more fundamentally, was seeing firsthand, kind of like what shaped me into the entrepreneur I am today. It was always kind of being different. So I was the only brown kid in my town. The rest of my town was very white. All my friends were white. And fortunately for me, I always ended up fitting in. I was on the soccer team, and had really close friends that I'm still close with today. But at the end of the day, was, had a different skin color, the only person adopted, and had a very unique story. So I always was, at the end of the day, had a different story, and different. And also seeing firsthand my mother support three kids by herself, raising three kids, working really hard. She always provided for the family, making sure we always had the
Wow.
things we needed, and lived comfortably, and paid all of the kids through college herself. Working very kind of blue collar type of jobs. She was a nurse, and was a nurse practitioner for most of her career. So very heads down, labor intensive there, whether it was the midnight shift or shifts during the day, double shifts, to make sure that we, lived comfortably. And so, seeing that firsthand, kind of definitely gave me some of the ingredients that I still use today as I'm starting my own companies and running companies now.
No, I imagine you probably had like an amazing example, right, from your mom. Sounds very hardworking and committed and passionate about just her family and her kids. And so, no, that must have been definitely a very teachable moment, or I guess a teachable childhood for you. Is there
Yep.
any particular thing that you remember your mom always telling you, like some piece of advice that it's always the same? My mom usually was like, put the sweater on. Like, see, she had something with the sweater, and she felt that we were all kind of cold for whatever reason. But what is there something that you remember from those days that your mom always told you that you still remember it till today?
Wasn't necessarily advice. She always provided great guidance, but it was just, being able to like see firsthand,
Right.
being heads down, and, getting it done, not complaining. And she was always faced with challenges, divorce, then she remarried, and he passed away from cancer. So huge curveballs kind of thrown in her way, but she was just continued to persevere. And, that, so it wasn't kind of like advice per se, but it was just kind of a definite role model.
No, that's definitely, yeah, the example, right? Just leading by example and teaching by
Exactly.
example. I think that's probably even a much, much better way of doing it anyways. So moving on a little bit more into your career, because I see that I went to your LinkedIn profile and I read a lot that you're a founder, co-founder. You've had like a very impressive kind of startup career. So tell us a little bit more about your professional career. Where did you start? What did you study?
Yeah, so actually I studied business and accounting at St. Michael's College in Vermont and played soccer there, as you noted. And right after school, actually, and as we were chatting before this podcast, you had told me that Barcelona is your favorite soccer team, and I had aspirations of playing for Barcelona's professional team, so I went over there after
we share
college.
That in common there. I still have them. I train every week.
Exactly. So I went over there in 2001 to 2002 and found a team, like a junior professional team to play for, and tried to climb my way up. But it was a great experience. It was right after college. I played soccer, got to travel.
You were a
around.
goalkeeper, right?
Yeah.
Which is a very ungrateful, tough position to play anyways.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, that was a great experience. And then went back to California, started my career off as an accountant. And then
and I'm sorry, I just interrupt you there, but so from the soccer trajectory and you wanted to make it to the first team, what kind of happened in that kind of time that said, well, you know what, maybe I'm not going to be the goalkeeper for the Barcelona anytime soon. I might do something else.
Yeah, well, one, like I'm 5'10", so I've always had that obstacle of being small and being in a position where it typically, makes sense to be larger. So I would make up for that. I would compensate for that by being really aggressive off the line, 50-50 balls and stuff like that. But to play professionally, I knew that the size was going to be a factor. And when I went over to Barcelona, just having exposure to people on the team that I was playing for, other teams that they were kind of just stuck. I was actually living on a flat with, at the time I was 21 and they were in their 30s, still trying to make it and kind of just postponing growing up per se. And so that experience gave me an insight of, hey, I don't want to be this guy just like hanging out in Barcelona or whatever European country trying to make it. And then, 10 years passes by and then I'm kind of stuck in no man's land. And so for me, it was like something I got off my chest as like, hey, I'm going to swing for it. I'm going to go for it. I actually was there, had the experience of living abroad. And then, I just got kind of lonely. I wanted to get back to the US with my friends and, start like something that I knew was going to be long-term. And so migrated to California because a lot of my friends in the East Coast ended up going out to San Diego, LA, San Francisco after college or even before college. And so I ended up landing out in Los Angeles at a CPA firm and ended up doing audit and taxation for mutual funds and hedge funds and venture capital funds. And eventually, after a couple of years of that, transitioned out and started my own back office for venture capital funds. It was me and one partner. And so here again, I was on my own starting a business from scratch, but this time it was accounting with no software. And through that experience, we started to partner and be the back office provider of venture capital firms. And so I was the CFO of a pretty famous fund out in San Francisco. It's called Lowercase Capital, or it was called Lowercase Capital, with Chris Sacca as the general partner. And he's gone on to start another fund. He actually was a shark on Shark Tank as well, and was his CFO. And he was putting money into Instagram and Uber. And so I was the accountant around the table at that time. And that gave me exposure to, what was happening in San Francisco. And, that was kind of like my eureka moment.
It sounds like an amazing school, right? I mean, it's just you're at the right place at the right time, working with all this incredible startups. That must have been, very educational for sure.
How's the background noise with the?
No, it's good.
Okay.
We're good.
Okay, perfect. So, because there's like a big siren right outside my house right now. So sorry about that. But yeah, so getting back on track.
So you decided to leave again, right? I mean, you actually wanted to go. So have you always? I mean, you always had in mind that you were going to start your own companies, or so the accounting thing was just kind of a part-time job while you actually came with a
Well,
better idea or a new idea, or how did you? Your mindset has always been being entrepreneurial, I believe. So
yep. Yeah. And, through that back office accounting business that I started, that gave me a taste again of creating something from scratch. But I wanted to do something more technology and more entrepreneurial. I didn't
right,
want to be stuck behind the computer number crunching, even though it was a phenomenal experience. And so it wasn't necessarily like I was doing it part-time or waiting for something better. It was just getting exposure to early stage technology. Being the CFO of these VC funds, I was still young enough and in the correct city at the time, San Francisco, to just pivot my career and put accounting on the back burner and jump headfirst into entrepreneurial. And yeah, so that's I've been in that space ever since. Over 10 years, I did a few startups in San Francisco. As you've noted, I now run a small venture fund as well, and now I'm here in Bogota starting new businesses here too.
could you tell us back then when you were first starting, I guess, into your second or third startup company, a mistake that you maybe made or something that kind of marked the kind of entrepreneur that you were going to be and that you became? Is there something there that you could share with us, maybe big mistakes, something that kind of made you rethink situation and the way you were approaching business, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, there was a lot of mistakes on my first business. Fortunately, I gravitated and was pretty good at fundraising. And so today, like one of the strengths that I have is being a good fundraiser, and that's being really persistent and focused on that objective and networking and working the pipeline of investors. And that's kind of what I dove into in those early days of my first startup. So I was good at that, meeting with people, asking for money. But what I wasn't good at was technology and building products. And some of the mistakes that I made then was over hiring. So I started to hire, my brother and his friends and my friends, and all of a sudden we had 20 people. Nobody knew what they were doing. I was paying everybody, but it felt good to be under the same roof, all
Right.
innovating towards something. I also tried to get involved with everything, and I tried to get involved with detailed product decisions. And at the end of the day, I'm pretty good at product, but I shouldn't be that deep into the weeds of product decisions. So I've learned to delegate and trust to the team around me to execute and get things done.
So
I
what
think
would you? No, go ahead. Sorry.
it's okay. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that I had was just not executing fast enough. I'd pause on making decisions. It would take a long time for me to make quick decisions, and and that would result in not executing on critical things that the company needed to advance on. And so those were some of the things that were mistakes in my early career.
So, and if you can share, like maybe the top three things that I guess, in your opinion, would make a company successful. I mean, what would those be? And then you just mentioned one now that's just maybe making quicker decisions when the time's right, as opposed to procrastinating those strategic decisions. But what other, I mean, in your mind, after all the companies you have started, and after all the other companies that you have probably gotten a chance to get to know through your career, what are the top things that you now value the most when it comes to starting a new venture?
Yeah, for me, it's execution. So part of what I learned on that first business of not being a good executor today, like I think it's critically important to make quick decisions, move the company forward, don't be a bottleneck to critical things, make sure the company is executing. And on that, it's executing on the right things. And so like focus is another key characteristic for companies to be successful. So if I look back on my past company, Lift It, which I'll explain more in a second, which is still an operating company here in Latin America. It's only 4 years old. And one of the things that we had to do at Lift It was be really focused on the truck delivery space in logistics. And when you're in logistics, you could do a lot of logistic services like warehousing or motorcycles
Right.
or freight forwarding. And it was really important for us just to focus on truck deliveries, and within that, focus on short distance truck deliveries. So I think it's incredibly important for startups to pick a niche and win that niche. And lastly, it's the founder. One of the key things for successful startups is founder chemistry, or founder energy as well. And so I was really fortunate with all my companies really, but specifically with my last one, Lift It, that the three founders, including myself, had really great chemistry, great energy. Not necessarily in the beginning, because we didn't have like a long track record of working with each other before. And so we had some speed bumps in 2017 and 18. But in my last year and a half of working with those guys, we started to peak on founder chemistry. And that really just, once you have that, you can collectively make decisions, and, you don't have to agree on everything, but you can come to a consensus and push the company forward. And once you're there at the founder level, then everything underneath starts to click a little bit better as well.
And were your partners from Colombia as well?
Yes.
So there was like all this different diversity and different experiences. And I guess it sounds like you guys complemented each other fairly well.
Yeah, extremely. If you put all three of us in the same room, we're completely different individuals, different ages. There's over 10 years difference between us. I'm older. And it was a really great experience working with those guys. But to your point, very, very different characters.
No, that sounds like a really exciting, fun venture, and I would like to talk a little bit more about it if you don't mind. So if you could tell us a little bit more for me and for the audience now, like, so what is Lift It? What problem were you guys trying to solve at the moment, and where is the company now, and what's kind of next for them? And then of course we'll move to your new venture, because that's kind of something that I particularly find really interesting and exciting. But tell us a bit more about Lift It.
Yeah, so in 2016, I relocated here. Well, actually, it was the first quarter of 2017, I actually physically relocated. But in that last 2 quarters of 2016, I was in between startups, and Felipe, Angel, and myself, the other founders, Felipe Betancourt and Angel Celis, had all previously worked together. And we all wanted to start something. The next business was going to be in Bogota. We didn't know what it was. And I started to venture down here, again, try to find my family, but also at the same time, try to find what that next startup was going to be. And for me, it was just on one of those trips, seeing physically the number of trucks that are on the street here in Bogota, and actually having an experience, firsthand experience with Felipe, one of the other founders, where we were at Home Center, which is a home goods store here in Bogota. We're buying a grill to cook, burgers during the one of the weekends that I was here. And through Home Center, they were not able to do same day delivery. But what we could do was go out in the street, because there was like 15 trucks just sitting there trying to solicit work. And that's what we did. We just went out on the street. Felipe recruited
just
a driver.
Independently, like there's just trucks and drivers there lining up, like.
Yep. Yeah. And so that's what we did. And we were able to get the grill home to our apartment same day. And through that experience, we saw, hey, there could be something here connecting truck drivers to retailers through technology. And so we started Lift It, which is a truck delivery platform connecting independent truck drivers to retailers, focused on short distance trucking, because being in software, all three founders, our entire careers, we looked at the truck driver market and realized you could do long distance trucking or short distance trucking. As an outsider looking in, it looks like, okay, it's the same business. You're doing truck deliveries. But starting actually as software developers, we're like, this is incredibly different, because, and the long distance trucking is not interesting at all, at least for us, like going Bogota to Cartagena and then, matching the load to come back to Bogota. That's not incredibly difficult to build technology for. We did not get excited about that. It's like going point A to point B and then coming back. What we got really excited for is like, what happens if you put 30 deliveries onto a truck and you have to deal with the traffic in the city, addresses changing every day, having to do database integration so you can receive those orders the day before, and then batching those orders into a particular truck, making sure that the cost per delivery is going to be low for the next day. That is an incredibly difficult problem to solve for software. And so, first starting as a software developer lens, and, from there, the business model was a lot better as well. The unit economics are more healthy, better margins, quicker payments. And so that's what Lifted does, is focus on those short haul deliveries. And today, almost 4 years old, because we launched January 2017. Today, the company is over 300 employees doing truck deliveries in 5 countries in Latin America. Here,
wow,
Colombia.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah.
Colombia was the first one though, right? That's where you guys launched it. That's where you...
Yeah, here in Colombia, then we launched to Mexico, then Chile, Brazil, and Ecuador. And so those are the 5 countries Lifted is in today. And we've been able to recruit and attract over 100 shareholders across the globe, largest VCs here in Latin America, the World Bank. Through the World Bank has a venture arm, IFC. They were one of our major investors as well. Recently bringing on a private equity firm in Florida who just focuses on logistics. Their name is Cambridge Capital. They led our last round, and all of the shareholders that we have are top tier investors and know the space really well. So it was really an amazing ride. And recently I transitioned out of the company. We recruited and hired a new CEO, Jim Van Leenen, who has spent a lot of his career running trucking companies in multiple countries, Canada and the US specifically, and knew the business really well. Oh, did I lose you? Sorry.
No, you kind of froze for a little bit, but you're back, so don't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah, so Jim's been a leader in truck transportation in multiple countries, Canada and the US. And he also has a personal connection to Latin America, but specifically Colombia. His wife is from Medellin. He speaks fluent Spanish, so it was a really perfect fit. And he also has known Cambridge Capital for many years, so was really excited to bring him on as the new CEO. And at that time, took the opportunity to transition out of the company and took a little bit of time off. But for me, I'm addicted to startups, and especially here in Latin America, I think there's incredible.
Why would you say that? I mean, I wanted to ask you that question down the road, but now that you brought it up, so what attracts you so much to Latin America? I know that there has a lot of different opportunities that maybe markets are kind of like following what something in the US or Europe is happening. It's starting to happen a little bit later on in Latin America, and it just goes on that way. But so what in particular do you see in general, and I guess then in particular about the supply chain opportunities in Latin America?
Yeah, so I mean, the region itself is, I don't know, call it at least 5 years behind some first world regions like the US. And so you're able to see business models that are working in other regions and not necessarily copy paste. Like Lifted was an idea that we saw kind of working in the US, but became a whole different beast relative to its nuances here in Latin America.
Is it like similar to Uber? I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is a little bit like an Uber model where you have like a membership subscription model for the truck drivers. Is that similar, the way it works, or?
That's an easy analogy. Just sure, like kind of randomly having that elevator pitch. However, it's not, because Lifted doesn't do, or tries not to do, on-demand services. Because for the trucking market in Latin America, and the demographics we were focused on is the driver owns his truck, which is a huge payment for this particular demographic. And if you try to recruit a truck driver saying like, hey, it's going to be on demand, I may give you services, that doesn't work. And so, Lifted's business model is long-term contracts directly with the retailer. And then after you found that side of the marketplace, then you go recruit the truck driver. And so it's, but it's not you and your friends trying to get the grill
back to your house as quickly as possible for the steaks. It's really just through the retailer that you're offering the service for their customers, so they don't have to go
Yeah.
through the same experience that you guys had at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the beginning, we did some smaller deliveries
Right.
and some B2C deliveries just to get to know the market. But Lyft has been very focused on like enterprise shippers and working directly with them with long-term
Do you
contracts.
think that could probably be like the next step in that particular industry? Like, will technology get to a point and just circumstances be such that you could
Yeah, I
have
mean,
that and hire them on the go as an individual?
yeah, Lyft is on the trajectory to win the trucking market in Latin America. So part of that is scaling downstream to small and medium-sized businesses, and then doing on demand as well once there's enough density in the city. But fortunately, we've been focused on the enterprise shippers, which still today, after 4 years, is still a ton of room to grow. So, while they'll probably shift downstream eventually, there's still a good at least 2 years of going deep with enterprise shippers.
Plus, you have
Yeah,
the
and
rest of the continent, right, on top of that, because you can go deep into one
yeah,
continent or one country, sorry, and then just go into others. And so, tell us a little bit more about the international expansion of Lyft and why those countries. I think you mentioned Brazil, Mexico, Ecuador, and I'm missing one. But what drove you to launch in those countries as opposed to maybe in others, Argentina or Paraguay or some others?
yeah. Well, one, I was super biased on starting here in Colombia, which I am
Right,
again with
right.
Kubo. I'm basically like on a mission to make sure Bogota is on. It already is. There's amazing startups here, and fortunate to have Lyft be one of them. But for the rest of my career, I'm going to be working out of the city, making sure Bogota is permanently on the map of an amazing city to build startups out of, and yeah, so that's why we started here. And then outside of that, Brazil and Mexico are obvious markets to be in because of the size, gigantic markets,
Right.
yeah, for many different industries. And then Chile and Ecuador were more bets on because we had such a deep roster of investors. We ended up having exposure to a lot of investors who also have direct exposure to retailers in those countries. And so we made the decision to expand there basically because of our shareholders and access to customers. And so quite happy with those 5 countries that we decided. As we were expanding so quickly after our Series A round, which was like December of 2018, basically 2019, we went from just being in Bogota to being in 5 countries and 18 cities. And in the middle of that, we were
That's
like,
rapid growth for sure.
yeah, in the middle of that, we kind of second guessed ourselves occasionally, but with hindsight, I think that was the correct move. And we definitely had a few speed bumps, but we ironed out those wrinkles, and those are 5 really great countries to be in Latin America. So happy with that.
What's next for Lifted? I mean, what's the and of course, if you can share with us,
Yep.
what's the next step? What other countries are coming? Are you trying and testing the model maybe in other similar regions like Africa or?
No, I mean, very focused on Latin America. The model works really well here because the dynamics, especially around the driver, and the driver typically being from a lower class segment, and they ultimately own the truck and want to own more trucks. And so Lyft is on a mission to empower those truck drivers to buy more trucks and be their own entrepreneur. And you don't necessarily get that same dynamic in other regions. And e-commerce and mobile penetration here in Latin America is just skyrocketing. So it's like a perfect storm for that model to work here. But I think more importantly, it's such a huge market, and it's important for Lyft to win the Latin America market. And specifically, kind of going back to your question, it's like, what's next? It's just, at least in the short term, it's to go deeper in the markets that we're in. It's still really early days on those 5 countries. And so it's important to, go deeper with the shippers that Lyft is working with, build out the leadership team there, possibly expand to a few more cities that has a lot of density, a lot of distribution centers and stores for retailers. So it's, pretty much doing the heads down and executing on a lot of the same things that Lifted has been doing in the short term.
Great. And so do you feel like the pandemic and coronavirus kind of has helped in any way? I'm guessing that there's been a lot more deliveries these days as opposed to people going into the stores. Do you think that kind of the timing when it came to that as well has actually favored you and your team when it comes to Lifted?
Yeah, being in the delivery space, it's a good spot to be in. I
Right.
think most of the delivery companies, I think across the world, has benefited from the pandemic one way or the other. Maybe not like immediately when the pandemic came out, even with Lyft, it was a few speed bumps in March, April, and May, but definitely now there's a big spike of uptick to the amount of truck deliveries that needs to be made, especially because people are not going into the stores and they prefer to buy online through their phone and get stuff delivered. And so that works really well for all delivery companies.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's been like a great story, and once again, appreciate having you here. And thank you very much for being so open and straightforward and sharing this with me and of course with our audience at Supply Chain Now.
Yeah.
One last question before we move on to what you're doing now, and because I'm very excited about that as well, and how the future is looking for you, Brian, as an individual, and then for all of your companies that I'm pretty sure you're going to be founding going forward. I mean, as an entrepreneur and as an individual and someone that's been very involved in all these different transformations, what would kind of like today's Brian, I guess, tell or I guess give advice to the younger Brian when he was just finishing his goalie career at Barcelona? I mean, what are the things that you would potentially tell your own self in the past that would helpful for you to kind of succeed in life?
Yeah. So for me, I wish I started earlier in my career. I started.
Well, I thought you started like at the lawnmower business was when you were what, 16, 17?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I started earlier with software, being a tech entrepreneur.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's pretty early for most people out there, but that's so on the tech side of things.
Yeah, definitely. Because I jumped into it in my late 20s and have had a phenomenal career, fortunately, since. But it took me, even today, I'm learning things that I should probably have learned a long time ago. And it starts with software development. I would have loved to have studied software development some way along my journey in my education career. Definitely will encourage my kids to get exposure to that early. And then understanding tech entrepreneurship earlier, just in general. Those would be the kind of the key elements. And then obviously like some more tactical things around being an entrepreneur, which fortunately I kind of figured out pretty quick through starting other businesses and, just my life experiences is, as glamorous as the entrepreneurship lifestyle can be, a lot of the times it's very rough and it's a roller coaster ride. There's a lot of ups, there's a lot of downs. And so it's important to stay positive and persevere and, have a North Star, and whatever you're working on, the business or your project is like, never lose focus of that North Star and continue to execute to advance the business in the right direction.
What is your North Star right now? And that would probably be a really good segue into what you're working on now and what's next for Brian Jork. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so for a while, I really liked the self-storage space. And since I was 17, I moved out of my house, my mother's house in south of Boston, and went to school in Vermont and Europe, then was in San Diego, LA, San Francisco, and was all over the place. I've actually never lived in one place for more than 1 year. And as a result, I'm always moving my things around. And today I have a monthly payment of about $500 a month for self-storage in between two self-storage facilities in the US. And I have no idea what's in those storage facilities. And I wish there was an easy way through technology to get access to that. So I've been actually going pretty deep on that market, starting in the U.S. and then now in Latin America. And so after Lifted, I actually launched a company that focused on the self-storage market, and we started to make self-storage deliveries here in Bogota. And what I learned is some of that self-storage facility space and talking to other self-storage facility providers is the like their exposure to e-commerce inventory is growing really strong. So there's a lot of businesses that need to store have their inventory in storage. And so you see this shift from B2C to B2B. And that was really exciting for me, especially coming off of my my last 4 years of being in supply chain and having exposure to knowing that retailers are also looking to get their inventory closer and fulfilled closer to their customers. And so we quickly have iterated the company over the last month to specifically focus on micro fulfillment in the dark store space. And so that's what Kubo is today. But it stemmed from a much larger and deeper pain within self-storage, and now has become focused on micro fulfillment. And so that's what we're doing today.
So you'll eventually, and this is what Kubo is all about, but you'll eventually actually be catering to probably the same kind of clients that Lifted has, right?
Yeah.
Which I'm guessing it's a big advantage for you because they already know you, they know your track record, and they trust you. So that could probably be another competitive advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. But the interesting thing about this is actually, unlike, in the future where Lifted might scale downstream to small and medium-sized businesses, for me, actually, it's quite interesting today because even if it's just one person selling through Mercado Libre or Amazon, they still need to have their stuff somewhere. And what you see with a one-person shop selling T-shirts is a lot of the time they just store their own stuff in their apartment. But if that business is going to be successful, they eventually really quickly grow out of that space and need to store their inventory somewhere. So with Kubo, it's good that, on day one, I can work with a business as big as one person. The sweet spot would be more kind of the medium-sized businesses. But to your point, I will definitely also be able to have conversations with larger retailers, which I've had in the past through my past experience.
That sounds like a really good idea. Clearly, there's the need in the market for sure, especially in Latin America. I can totally see this being a really good idea for Mexico as well. I'm originally from Mexico, and I think that actually can see it happening there as well. So, but it's important to tell people that also you can. It's a much smaller scale, if you will, when it comes to the kind of clients that you're going to target, which I think it's helping also the entrepreneurial community in Colombia, which I'm guessing it's also one of your objectives and why you're starting all these companies in Colombia, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And Mexico will be my next market that I launch, but starting here in Bogota, I'm then getting to Mexico within 12 months. Mexico is going to be a critical market. And I like getting to Mexico quickly because it is a much bigger market than Colombia is. And it also, the proximity to the US is good. It's easy to, take a trip, through Mexico if you need to. And it's also good to prove that you can replicate the business model into other countries in order to, have a future round of financing as well.
So, and without getting into like the politics of things, because we'll have to have like at least another 2 hours, and it's just not the goal of the show. But it has politics in the world kind of shifted in a way that has actually prevent you from growing faster, maybe in certain countries than others, or still pretty open for entrepreneurs to go into every country in Latin America?
Yeah, politics has not affected the businesses that I've had exposure to or done in Latin America. Maybe on a small scale, but it hasn't slowed down the trajectory of those businesses. But at the same time, the businesses haven't been at mega scale where perhaps there would have been roadblocks if those businesses had been bigger.
You're still flying under the radar, I guess, in some instances. But no, thank you so much again. I mean, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and it's been very exciting. And I'm pretty sure that you'll be really successful with this new venture, Kubo, as you've been with all the other ventures that you've started. Before we wrap the program up, if you could just final challenge to our audience, and if you could challenge them to do something, everyone that's listening to you right now, either in Latin America or in the US and around the world, what would you challenge them to do?
So for me, the challenge is to cut out TV from your life. For me,
That's a
actually,
good one.
for me, I've completely cut out TV. Occasionally I'll watch a movie to relax the mind, especially on the weekends. But I was, even with growing up in the Boston area, I was watching a lot of sports on TV and sitcoms or whatever growing up. And then at a particular time, almost around the same time I became an entrepreneur, I just cut that completely out, sort of cold turkey. And it's crazy the amount of productivity that I've got from that. And so my challenge is not like cut it out completely, but take 2 weeks off, and on that time, go deep on a project or an idea that you're working with, launch something, write something, read something, understand a topic a little bit deeper, and you'll be surprised like what a waste of time watching TV is just in general. So that's the challenge.
Wow, that's and it's not an easy challenge actually. Just everyone out there kind of listening to Brian, the challenge is very clear. 2 weeks without TV.
Exactly.
But it sounds a lot easier than what I'm sure it's gonna be, right? I mean, I'll give it a try, but 2 weeks without TV, TV has become such an integral part of what everyone is doing, especially now through the pandemic. That I mean, all the Netflix shows and all the different shows, but that's a good, really, really good piece of advice.
Yeah, no, that's it. So I think there's definitely a lot of positive that can come from that. So looking forward to see the results if there's any.
Thank you very much. And I guess before we let you go, Brian, where can people that are listening to us get to know you better, get in touch, learn a little bit more about Kubo, your ventures, or if there's anyone out there with a good idea, which I'm pretty sure they're going to have after 2 weeks of not watching TV. Where can they find you?
Yeah. So the easiest place is through LinkedIn. I respond to, in general, I respond to most cold messages if it's a thoughtful message, and especially through LinkedIn, just keep it short, keep it thoughtful, and I'll respond 100% of those times. Maybe not right away, but though I'm pretty good at doing it. So through LinkedIn, Brian York. You'll see me there, and that's an easy way to get in contact with me.
Thank you very much. Gracias a Brian por estar con nosotros en este episodio. ¿Algunas palabras en español para cerrar la entrevista? Nothing? No. In Spanish, not a couple of words?
Yeah, well, gracias a todos por escucharme y
That was perfect. That was perfect. Okay. We'll wait for the second interview in Spanish in a couple more weeks, Brian. And this is Enrique Alvarez with Supply Chain Now. Please, if you like this episode and you kind of enjoyed the conversation with Brian as much as I did, please don't forget to subscribe on any platform that you currently get your podcast from, or visit us on our website at supplychainnow.com. Brian, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. Have a good day and thanks.
Likewise. Thanks, Enrique.